Am I late? I am always late. Welcome to another weekly graphic novel, comic, and manga vlog. I was not good about doing this in June. I think I've said this time and time again, but I think I keep repeating myself to like make myself feel better about the fact that I have done an awful job of keeping up with this in June. But I do give myself grace because it was just such a busy month for me in June, and so I'm like, you gotta be lenient with yourself. Like you gotta take it easy on yourself, because there's just no way that you would have been able to manage all of the things at one time, you know, without burning yourself out. So I did have footage from previous weeks, but honestly, like, I'm just not gonna use it. I just don't feel like what is the purpose at this point. I'm just not going to use it. So we're going to start fresh for the month of July, and we're just going to go with it from here. Today is Wednesday, so we're about halfway through the week already. I have read two things. I was off yesterday because it was the 4th. I don't celebrate the 4th, but I was off. And so I was able to get just a little bit of reading done, not a whole lot, but just a little bit, which is all I needed. So I ended up reading two graphic novels. The first one, middle grade graphic novels. The first one that I ended up reading was Lo and Behold by Wendy Mass, which was really interesting. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't know what to expect going into it, to be honest with you, because I'm familiar with Wendy Mass writing prose, but this is her first step into graphic novels, which is completely, totally fine. Whatever. Whatever. It's cool. It's perfectly fine. And it was different. It was different because I thought at first, the premise of the book is that we have this main character who is moving from, don't ask me to remember her name because I'm not going to remember it, but she's moving from her hometown for the summer to a college campus because her dad is really invested in virtual reality. And so part of this graphic novel is an ode to, I don't want to say an ode, it is a way to showcase the ways that virtual reality can be used. I think that what Wendy Mass was going for is that people have these perceptions of virtual reality, but it actually can be used in very beneficial ways, like empathy labs. It could be used when people are dealing with illnesses to help them cope with treatments. There's an example of kids specifically in this graphic novel using it while they get chemo treatments or blood drawn, or sometimes it could be used as a way to help take people back to certain places that they remember and can no longer go to. There's an elderly gentleman in this who had to leave his country. I believe it was kind of alluded to the Holocaust, if I'm not mistaken. And so they were able to take him back, you know, pre that era, and he was able to feel as though he was connecting with family again, even though he doesn't have the opportunity to see them again. And so at one point I thought it was just that, but our main character's mother gets injured and she's not present at all in the book. And I don't want to give too much away, but she's not present, and you see her father trying to fill in the gaps where her mother used to be. And it's more emotional than what I anticipated. I think she at first uses virtual reality to get away and not cope with things. And I think that she is the prime example of what it means to go through grief and feel like you're the only person who has ever felt the way that you're feeling. I know that whenever I have felt pain, it's easy for me to be like in my head about it and think like, no one understands this. Like, no one has ever felt this way before. It could be very isolating. And she quickly learns that she's not the only one that deals with difficult things. And it's not that it minimalizes her pain and her grief, but it shows her that there are healthy ways to cope with that grief, and that avoidance and shutting out the world and not doing what's necessary to heal and grow and to move past it is not, it won't change anything. And she was very much so just sitting in her grief, sticking to her grief, and not really attempting to move on. There were a couple of things that I wish Mass would have gone into a little bit more, There are some things between the main character and her father that I think could have been explored just a tad bit more and could have given a better perception of the relationship between the whole entire family dynamics. I have to tiptoe around it because I don't want to give it away, because the ending was not what I anticipated at all. Like, at all. It was not what I was looking for, and not in a bad way, but it was just like, oh, okay, now that all makes sense. But I wish that she would have kind of built up to that moment a little bit more, and I wish she would have tackled that climax point at the end. I wish she would have tackled it a little bit more and given a little bit of a more in-depth exploration of it. I find difficulty explaining it without spoiling it, but I did read that one. I also ended up reading Parachute Kids by Betty C. Tang. I think I'm just confused as to why no one told me that Parachute Kids was going to be as dark as it was. So I became more familiar with the term Parachute Kids because I read Kelly Yang's book Parachutes. Prior to reading Kelly Yang's book Parachutes, I think in 2020, I was not actively aware of the fact that it is, I don't want to call it a cultural phenomenon, but it is a cultural practice. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a cultural practice where you have Asian families that will send their kids overseas, specifically like to the United States, to give them better opportunities, but they will leave them here by themselves. And I did not know that that was a thing until I read Parachute Kids. Until I read Parachutes. And so when I saw that Parachute Kids was coming out, I said, okay. I said, well, I want to know more, learn more. So this would be a great opportunity for me to better explore what it means to be a parachute kid. So we are following 3 siblings. It's 2 girls and a boy. And their parents bring them to the United States under the guise of going to Disney World. Like, they're on vacation. And then when they get here, bam, the dad's like, okay, I'm leaving. And so the eldest sister knew, the 2 youngest did not know. And so she was more prepared than the other two. The other 2 were kind of like shocked, like, what? What do you mean you're leaving? Like, when are you coming back? And he's like, well, I don't know because I have to work. And then boom, mom is like, okay, now I have to go because my visa's about to run out. And if I don't go back, then my visa I won't be able to get another visa. I won't be able to come back. So they leave the oldest daughter in charge. And she, based off of her taking the SAT, she's got to be like 17 at most. And her little brother is probably 13, 14 at most because he's a freshman in high school. They don't speak English very well. The oldest daughter does. She's able to communicate better. But the youngest can't speak English at all. And so it was so tough watching them having to navigate a world where they couldn't even communicate with anybody. And it just like, it was literally like, boom, problem. Then they get a little bit of a break. Then boom, it was like, if it wasn't one thing, it was another. And it goes to show how resilient kids are. But it also illustrates this idea, and Betty C. Tang said this in the author's note, that not all parachute kids come from wealthy backgrounds. What they were trying to do with the dialogue and with the characterization in this book is break some stereotypes that I think people have of Asian communities, like, you know, super intelligent, money, wealth. And so it's like, that's not everyone's experience, like just not a monolith. And some people like really have to work, you know, boots to the ground to get what they want. And you can see that even within the family dynamics. There is, you know, the older sister who is very intelligent, but when you talk about have to work hard, and works hard and still is unable to accomplish everything that she wants to accomplish. And then you have the younger sister who just wants to be amongst her siblings, but her siblings are just kind of like, they're teenagers. They don't want to deal with their younger sister. They want to be able to be kids, but they can't because they're left with this major responsibility. And it's kind of like, you have this respect for the parents for wanting them to be able to have access to better opportunities, but at the same time you're like, oh my God, like I couldn't imagine leaving my child in a foreign country by herself with maybe a neighbor that checks in on them, or, you know, some other community member or a friend of a friend. Like I can't imagine it, because I think that I'm in a place where I don't have to imagine that. But in this specific instance, like, our characters are from Taiwan, and so when relations got a little tricky, especially with the US involved in the relationship between Taiwan and China, they were fearful of what would come from that. And so they were like, I would rather put my child in a situation where they can benefit and have better opportunities and they're safe, as opposed to staying here where they're comfortable and we don't know if a war is going to break out. And so I have to have a certain level of respect. Like, I can't lie and say like, oh, I 100% get it and I would do the same thing, because I don't know if I would, because I'm not put in that position. But I have to have respect to be like, okay, it's either we send our kids off, give them a chance, or we keep them here and we leave them in danger. Like, that's a heck of a decision to make. And your kids have a resentment towards you. It's clear that these 3 siblings, they have resentment towards their parents, no fail. Like, they're pissed at them, and rightfully so. They're like, how could you just abandon us? And those are very, very valid feelings. And I mean, these kids get into everything, stealing, getting scammed, and oh gosh, it was such a picture of reality to someone else's experience, which I always say, like, kids need to see the experiences of others, because what we see on the outside does not dictate how someone's experience has been in the background. You don't know what people have had to do or what they've experienced to get from point A to point B. And so I always say, like, listen, it's not all roses, even though people may make it seem as though it is. And so Betty C. Tang does a great job capturing that. And man, it was a good read. It was a really, really good read. And watching them, you know, they struggled a lot. They did. And the ending itself still isn't perfect. I think that, you know, when they were having a discussion with their parents towards the end of it, it was just like, you know, this is not a perfect situation. And it's still not going to be a situation where it's like, oh, you know, your parents are going to now stay with you. No, like, you still are going to have to figure it out on your own. But, you know, each month that goes by, you learn more and you're able to figure out the situation. So I gave it 4.5 stars. I gave 4.5 stars because I wanted Betty to explore a theme with the brother, and I can't say what it is because it's a spoiler. I wanted her to explore it more, because I feel like there were some unanswered questions. I figured it out pretty early on. There was a flashback and I was like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. But, and it like, there was certain things that were happening in the beginning. I was like, I wonder if, and then a flashback, and then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. And there's something that happens at the end involving just him and who he is as a person. And I wish that that was explored more. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that Betty does write a sequel to this. I think that there's room for a sequel for this. I think the artwork is good. It's very, very text heavy. Very, very text heavy. But I do think that there's room for a sequel. I would really love to see a sequel. Anyway, 4.5 stars. 4 stars. Great. Now, I just filmed my July reading plans. And I have these 8 titles. I don't know how well y'all can see them. But I have these 8 titles that I chose as a way to read from my collection and read some stuff that I have checked out from the library. This is not all that I plan to read for the month of July, but these are some things that I want to focus in on to see if I can stick to some plans. I don't know what I want to pick up next. Okay, so I'm in the middle of reading Aimiha. This is a young adult graphic novel that is about a 6-year-old named Christine, who is half Mexican, half white, and she is going to Mexico to spend some time with her grandparents and her aunts. And she's not that good at speaking Spanish. She doesn't really feel like she fits in as much as she should fit in, but it's good so far. Like, I'm enjoying it. I think it's that feeling of being caught in between Two Worlds. So I'm about 62 pages into that. I think this is one that I probably will continue with this evening. I am about to do a quick workout and then shower, and I don't plan on staying up too late tonight, but hopefully I can get a little bit more of that read tonight. I don't know what I'm going to do after that. The options are limitless. I think one of the things that I want to do that I want to do a reading vlog where I try 3 new series, and I have 3 on my shelf that I can try, and I should do that, honestly, to get some of the stuff on my shelf read, but it would be a separate vlog from this that would go up sometime like next week, but we'll see. I'll make a decision soon. I don't know. All right, y'all, I'll check in later. That was a long intro. Oh my God, that was so long, but I'll check in later. Something outside of the 2 graphic novels that I was telling y'all about. I ended up reading Hungry Ghosts by Victoria Ying, who I'm familiar with because she's done some of the work for the Diana series that Shannon Hale wrote, I believe, with her husband. And I was very surprised about how almost triggered I was by reading it, unfortunately. So I'm gonna go ahead and say here, just for anyone who has ever dealt with disordered eating or would be bothered by conversation about disordered eating, I definitely would just say skip ahead. I'll make sure I leave a timestamp so that you can click on it and move on. You can pause it, click on, and move on to the next section of this vlog, because I don't want anyone to feel, I hate how the lighting changed. I don't want anyone to feel any type of way or to feel bothered by the content. So Hungry Ghosts is about a woman who's dealing with a mother who appears to have issues herself, but she's very much so, she's been watching her daughter's eating for as long as her daughter can remember. And it's difficult on the daughter because as a result of her mother being kind of toxic, not even kind of toxic, being extremely toxic, she has disordered eating. This is so difficult for me to talk about because I didn't realize like how bothered I would be by it, because I also grew up with a mother who has really had issues, I think, with her own eating and her body image, and it was very much so a reinforcement in my house. I was constantly watched on how much I ate, and I would often get in trouble if I ate more than what she thought was appropriate. And I was very much so like, my body was always commented on. I've been told that I've needed to crash diet before, and so I grew up with a lot of body image issues that I still deal with today. And I, even in my journey of trying to become more healthy, I have to be very careful about how I deal with that and how I attempt to manage my own health. So basically, her mother is so deep into watching what she eats that she ends up with disordered eating, and it impacts her every way in her life. nobody in her family or her friends know, but just like the obsession with counting calories. And so it basically chronicles that, and she finally comes to a breaking point where she realizes, like, I can't do this anymore. And it's not a pretty conclusion. It's not a neat conclusion. She's on a journey of recovery, but it's difficult. It's a difficult thing in how she processes how her mother has pretty much treated her and what it's led to. And oh my gosh, y'all, I'm gonna give it 4 stars because I feel like there were some parts of it. It deals a little bit with grief, and so I think there were some parts of it that I would have liked just a little bit more development in, but I couldn't imagine how difficult this book was for Victoria to write, and I did not anticipate it being so difficult for me to read. And it's not that I didn't know, or I've never talked about the fact that I feel like I grew up in a household that perpetuated body image issues for me. But I think that seeing the obsession with the cycle of binge and purging, that have impacted me more than I anticipated. And I've never been diagnosed or anything with disordered eating, but I mean, this one kind of hit me kind of hard, y'all. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it hit me, not even kind of hard, it hit me really, really hard in unexpected ways that I just couldn't imagine. So yeah, 4 stars. I just wanted to update y'all on that. I did start Why Raeliana Ended Up in the Duke's Mansion, and I'm about halfway through that one. I plan on finishing that one tonight, and if I do, I will update y'all. So this is the final clip for the weekend, or for this week. And honestly, y'all, I haven't read much more besides those 3 that I talked about. I talked about, lo and behold, Parachute Kids, and then I did talk about Hungry Ghosts, which was oh my gosh, that was a tough one for me. That was really, really tough. And I'm having this, like, I'm scratching my ear because I'm having, my eczema is flaring up this year in very, very weird places. And behind my ear is a new one. Never in my life. It's new. And, you know, we all love that. But I'm double checking to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And yeah, I did start The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich, which is cute, but I'm only like 17% into that one. Some other things that I did end up reading. So I was supposed to finish Ay Mija this weekend. I didn't get to sit down and read as much as I wanted to, but let me see. I feel like I did get to so I got to chapter 8, which is about a third of the way through. It's 111. Yeah, it's 111 pages into this one. I am enjoying it. What's very fascinating about this is that parts of it are bilingual, so there are sections that are just in Spanish, which is why it's taken me a little bit longer than I anticipated. There is no translation, which I appreciate on the behalf of the author, because, you know, you gotta do the work. I'm just that type of person. I know everybody's not that type of person, but I am that type of person where I don't mind doing the work. And so there are some pieces of this that I'm actually going through and translating, which is, I think, a very good creative move from Christine Suggs, because it is about her experience going to Mexico to meet with her family and not being able to speak Spanish. So you get this feeling of confusion when you're reading it because it is in Spanish, but it's exactly how she would feel, because she's half Mexican, half white, and she just wasn't exposed. She was almost fluent when she was younger, but she lost it as she got older. And so when she's around her family, there's this confusion or this sense of not really knowing what's going on because she can't speak Spanish fluently. And so as a reader, you kind of get the same feeling where you're like, dang, I'm not sure exactly what's going on because I don't speak Spanish. So very, very good creative move and really relevant move on her behalf in the creation of this. And there are some queer themes in this, which I think I knew, but I think that she is trying to also figure out her sexuality in the course of all of this. But I probably will read a little bit more tonight, but I probably will cover more of this in the upcoming week. And then the other things that I have been reading, I'm almost finished with this. I was so tempted to be like, oh, I'll just close this vlog out when I get finished reading this one. But honestly, I'll include it. Like I said, I'll include it in next week's. And that is Why Aureliana Ended Up at the Duke's Mansion. I'm enjoying this one. And I don't have that much more to read. It literally is kind of the same. It's not the same premise, but they're similar as the Villains Are Destined to Die. This is the second volume. I'm on hold for the third volume because I'm on hold for the third volume and haven't even finished the second one. But this one is she's transported into a video game. This one she's transported into a book that she's read, and the book itself is a murder mystery, and she knows that she's the character. She's not the main character, but she's a side character that ends up dying, that brings forth the actual main character, who is a kind of like a Sherlock vibe to it. So she's trying to prevent her own death because she knows that it's going to happen. And so she's trying to change the course of the book itself with the knowledge that she has because of the fact that she's read the book. So it's interesting. This is, you know, Duke that's involved that she's trying to cut a deal with. And he's kind of dark and sinister. And so I know quite a few volumes of this one are out, and I'm excited to pick it up. I'm glad that Yen Press has decided to pick up these stories. I know that they are originally in Korean, it's manhwa, and I'm excited about it. Just my first time. I mean, they're expensive, $20. So I'm happy that my library is getting them because they're $20 a piece, but they're full color and they're absolutely gorgeous. And so after I finish this one, I think sometime this week coming up, I'm going to end up finishing Villains Are Destined to Die Volume 2 because that's been on my radar for forever. But other than that, y'all, I haven't really read much of anything. So this week, of course, is naturally going to be a little bit shorter than prior weeks. But I'm hoping to, you know, get through at least those 3 in the early parts of this upcoming week, and then I'll see where I'm gonna go from there. But let me know what you've read recently in terms of graphic novels, comics, and manga in the comment box down below. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and I will be back with another video soon.